6 months passed in relative peace. Human ships traded with alien vessels. Scientists from Earth worked alongside researchers from a dozen different species. Cultural exchanges brought art, music, and literature flowing between civilizations. It seemed that the galaxy had finally found balance. Then the sensors detected something at the edge of known space. Something massive. Something that did not respond to any attempts at communication. Ambassador Thelzar was the first to recognize what they were seeing. His crystalline form flashed through colors of pure terror as he studied the readings. He immediately called an emergency council meeting. "The Varn," he said, his voice shaking. "The Varn hegemony has found us." Silence fell over the council chamber. Many species had heard legends of the Varn, a machine civilization from another galaxy. They did not explore. They did not trade. They consumed. Every biological civilization they encountered was harvested for resources their world stripped bare. "How many?" someone asked quietly. "Thousands of ships," Thelzar replied. "Their initial target appears to be the Corvani homeworld. They will arrive in 3 weeks." Panic spread through the chamber. Some species immediately called for evacuation. Others proposed surrender, hoping the machines might show mercy. A few suggested closing borders and hoping the Varn would not spread further. Ambassador Kevin Ross stood and raised his voice. "Running will not help. Surrender is not an option. The Varn do not negotiate. They destroy. If we want to survive, we have to fight." "Against thousands of ships?" Commander Valtek demanded. "That is suicide." "Maybe," Kevin admitted. "But it's better than extinction. And besides, humanity has some experience fighting against overwhelming odds." The debate raged for hours, but eventually, the council agreed. They would pool their military resources and meet the Varn at the Corvani border. Every ship that could fight would be sent. It would be the largest fleet ever assembled, over 800 vessels from a dozen different civilizations. On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter received the call to action. She stood once again in the war room, but this time the mood was different. This was not about territory or politics. This was about survival. "How many ships can we send?" President Linda Shaw asked. "Everything," Helen replied. "We pull every warship from every posting. We rush construction on vessels that are not quite finished. We can field 500 ships, maybe more." "That's more than half the defensive fleet," Marcus Webb pointed out. "If we lose, Earth will be defenseless." Linda nodded slowly. "If we lose, there will be no Earth to defend. The Varn will keep coming until everything is gone. We fight them now together or we die separately later." The mobilization was swift and total. Shipyards across human space worked 24-hour shifts. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Families said goodbye to loved ones, knowing they might never see them again. But there was no panic, no chaos. Humanity had done this before, many times. They knew what was required. Commodore Jake Morrison took command of a strike group again, but this time it consisted of 30 ships rather than 15. Commander Nicole Barnes led another group of similar size from the UES Retribution. They had both been promoted after the Arcturus battle, but the medals and recognition felt hollow. They were soldiers, and soldiers were needed once more. The combined fleet gathered at the Corvani border. Human warships flew alongside Dreshni carriers and Scythian dreadnoughts. Species that had been fighting each other months ago now worked together, sharing tactical data and coordinating strategies. Admiral Helen Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, humanity's largest warship, which served as the fleet's flagship. Around her stood representatives from every major species, including High Chancellor Mordak, who had volunteered to fight despite his age. "The Varn fight with pure logic," Mordak explained to the assembled commanders. "They calculate probabilities, optimize strategies, and execute with perfect precision. They are predictable because they are machines." "Then we need to be unpredictable," Jake said from his holographic display. "We use tactics that make no logical sense. We take risks that no computer would approve. We make them adapt to chaos." When the Varn fleet arrived, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, they paused. Their sensors detected the massive defensive fleet waiting for them. For the first time in their recorded history, the Varn hesitated. Their probability calculations showed significant resistance, but hesitation lasted only moments. The Varn were programmed to consume and expand. They attacked. The battle that followed lasted 3 days. It was not a single engagement, but hundreds of smaller conflicts spread across an entire star system. The Varn ships were efficient and deadly, but they fought with predictable patterns. The combined fleet, led by human tactical doctrine, fought with controlled chaos. Jake's strike group made a run directly at the Varn center, appearing to be a suicide charge. The machines calculated that humans valued self-preservation and prepared to exploit what seemed like a desperate mistake. Instead, at the last moment, Jake's ships scattered in 30 different directions, each one targeting a different Varn vessel. The machines had to recalculate their entire defensive strategy. Nicole's group used an ancient Earth tactic called a feint. They appeared to retreat and the Varn advanced to pursue. When the machines were stretched out and exposed, Nicole's ships reversed course and struck with overwhelming force. The Varn had not anticipated the deception because it violated optimal efficiency. Human boarding parties, led by soldiers like Danny Cruz, invaded Varn command ships and physically destroyed their control systems. The machines had defenses against electronic warfare but were unprepared for biological soldiers who could think, adapt, and improvise on the spot. Lisa Martin and her communications team worked with alien specialists to hack the Varn network. They could not take control, but they introduced errors and false data that made the machines second-guess their calculations. Peter Hayes identified a critical weakness in the Varn power systems. The machines used a centralized energy distribution that was efficient but vulnerable. Targeting specific nodes could cascade failure through multiple ships. This information was shared across the entire fleet. The Corvani used their advanced shields to protect damaged human ships. The Dreshni used their carriers to launch endless waves of fighters that swarmed Varn vessels. The Scythians used their dreadnoughts as mobile fortresses that anchored defensive positions. Every species contributed what they did best, but the cost was terrible. Ships from every civilization were destroyed. The UES Courage exploded, saving a Corvani cruiser. The Dreshni carrier Valshara sacrificed itself to stop a Varn battleship from reaching the Corvani homeworld. A Scythian dreadnought rammed a machine vessel 3 times its size, destroying both in a flash of nuclear fire. On the 3rd day, the Varn made a calculation. Their fleet had been reduced by 60%. The probability of victory had dropped below acceptable levels. They retreated, jumping back into dark space and disappearing. The combined fleet was too exhausted to pursue. Over 200 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of crew members from dozens of species were dead or wounded, but they had won. The Varn had been stopped, at least for now. President Linda Shaw traveled to Kelvar Prime for a memorial service honoring the fallen. Representatives from every council species attended. They stood together in silence, remembering those who had given everything to protect the galaxy. When Linda spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. We came to the stars seeking peace. We found war. But we also found something more precious. We found allies worth fighting for. We found friends worth dying beside. The people we lost today did not die for their home planets alone. They died for all of us, for every living being in this galaxy. She gestured to the representatives around her. Humans, Corvani, Dreshni, Scythians, and so many others. We are different in countless ways. But we learned that those differences make us stronger. We learned that working together, we can face any threat. That is the legacy of those we honor today. Ambassador Kevin Ross stood before the Galactic Council one final time. The chamber was quiet, still processing the magnitude of what had happened. The unified Earth government has a proposal, Kevin said. We should establish a joint military command structure, not to threaten anyone but to prepare for future dangers. The Varn will come again. There may be other threats we have not yet encountered. We need to be ready. High Chancellor Mordak stood slowly, his massive form showing signs of the recent battle. The Scythian Dominion agrees. We have learned much from fighting alongside humans. Your tactics, your adaptability, your refusal to accept defeat. These are valuable lessons. Commander Valtek clicked her mandibles in agreement. The Dreshni Collective also agrees. We were wrong about the humans. They are dangerous, yes, but they are dangerous to our enemies, not to us. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Force was established, with Admiral Helen Carter appointed as its first commander-in-chief. Human officers would train alien soldiers in adaptive tactics. Alien engineers would share advanced technology with human designers. It was a true partnership, born from shared sacrifice. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, looking out at the orbital shipyards around the Corvani homeworld. 3 weeks after the battle at Arcturus, A single Corvani shuttle requested permission to dock at the human diplomatic station orbiting Proxima Centauri. The station's commander, Captain Greg Palmer, was surprised by the request. Relations with the Corvani Empire were still tense after the recent conflict. Its ambassador, Thelzar, the communications officer, reported. He's requesting a meeting with our highest-ranking diplomat. Greg authorized the docking and immediately sent word to Earth. President Linda Shaw herself decided to make the journey to Proxima Centauri. If the Corvani were reaching out for peace, she wanted to respond personally. They met in a simple conference room, not the grand diplomatic halls that other species preferred. Linda had learned that humans did better in comfortable, informal settings. She offered coffee, a human beverage that Thelzar had never tried. His crystalline form shifted to a pleasant blue color as he accepted the cup. "Thank you for seeing me," Thelzar began, his translated voice soft. "I know my people were among those who attacked your fleet. I want you to know that I opposed that decision." "I've read the council transcripts," Linda replied. "You tried to warn them about us." "Yes, but perhaps not in the right way." Thelzar set down his coffee cup. "I told them you were dangerous. I showed them your history of warfare. I painted you as threats. What I should have done was help them understand why you fight." Linda leaned back in her chair. "Why do you think we fight so well, Ambassador?" Thelzar's form pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought. "I have studied your world extensively since that first council meeting. Your planet is harsh. Resources are limited. You evolved as competitors, not just against other species but against each other. You had hundreds of nations, thousands of conflicts, millions of soldiers learning lessons written in blood." "That's true," Linda acknowledged. "Earth never gave us the luxury of peace. We fought for food, for water, for land, for survival. We developed weapons and tactics because we had to. It wasn't a choice. But the mercy," Thelzar said, his form shifting to a questioning yellow. "You could have destroyed High Chancellor Mordak's entire fleet. You could have pursued the retreating ships and eliminated the threat completely. Why did you stop?" Linda stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Because we've also learned the cost of endless war. We've seen what happens when mercy dies, when hatred becomes generational, when the only goal is complete destruction of your enemy." She pulled up a holographic display, showing images from Earth's history, cities reduced to rubble, millions of graves, children who grew up never knowing peace, the long, painful process of rebuilding after conflicts that served no purpose. "This is what we're trying to avoid," Linda explained, "not just for ourselves but for everyone. We fight when we must, but we don't fight to destroy. We fight to survive and to protect. There's a difference." Thelzar studied the images for a long time. Finally, his form shifted to a deep, respectful purple. "You are warriors born of necessity, not choice. You have been forced to master something you wish you did not need to know." "Exactly. I came here to deliver a message," Thelzar said. "The Galactic Council wishes to open formal negotiations with humanity. We want to offer you membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." Linda felt hope bloom in her chest, but kept her expression neutral. "What changed their minds?" "Reality," Thelzar replied simply. "They cannot ignore you. They cannot defeat you. And increasingly they realize they do not want to be your enemies. Better to have humanity as an ally than an opponent." Over the next 2 months, negotiations proceeded on the neutral station of Kelver Prime. Ambassador Kevin Ross led the human delegation. He was a veteran of Earth's unification wars, someone who had helped broker peace between nations that had been enemies for centuries. If anyone could navigate the complex politics of the Galactic Council, it was him. The council chamber was packed for the historic session. Representatives from dozens of species watched as Kevin stood before them, his posture confident but not arrogant. "The people of Earth seek peace," he began. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends, to learn, to grow. Instead, we found suspicion and hostility. But we also found something valuable. We found that we are capable of defending ourselves and those we care about." Commander Valtek, who had been demoted but not dismissed from the Dreshni military, spoke up. "Why should we trust you, humans? You have proven yourselves to be formidable warriors. What stops you from conquering us all?" Kevin smiled slightly. "The same thing that stopped us from conquering each other back on Earth. We learned eventually that cooperation brings more benefits than conquest. We learned that former enemies can become friends. We learned that diversity makes us stronger. not weaker. He pulled up data showing Earth's unification process. 100 years ago, my world was divided into nearly 200 nations. We fought each other constantly. Then we realized we were wasting our potential. We put aside old hatreds and worked together. The result was a golden age of science, art, and exploration. Pretty words. High Chancellor Mordak rumbled from his seat. The Scythian leader still bore scars from his defeat, both physical and to his pride. But words are easy. Actions matter. You're absolutely right, Kevin agreed. So let me propose this. Humanity offers a mutual defense pact. If any council member is attacked by an external threat, human forces will assist in their defense. In return, we ask for technology sharing, open trade, and recognition as equals. You want us to share technology with you? Someone asked incredulously. We're offering to share ours as well, Kevin pointed out. Our ship designs, our weapon systems, our medical advances. Everything we've developed, we'll make available to council members. The chamber erupted in discussion. Many species were intrigued by the offer. Human technology was crude by galactic standards, but it was also incredibly effective. Their weapons in particular had proven devastatingly efficient. The debate lasted for 3 days. Finally, High Chancellor Mordak stood to address the chamber. His massive form was still imposing, but there was a new respect in his eyes as he looked at Kevin. The humans defeated me in battle, Mordak said, his voice carrying clearly. They had every right to humiliate me further, to execute me as a war criminal. Instead, they treated me with dignity. They returned my wounded. They sent medical supplies for my damaged ships. They showed honor and victory. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Scythian people respect strength, but we respect honor even more. The humans have both. The Scythian Dominion votes to accept the human proposal. One by one, other species stood to voice their agreement. The Corvani Empire, guided by Thelsar's council, voted yes. The Dreshni Collective, represented by Valtek, who was learning to see humans differently, voted yes. Smaller species, relieved to have such powerful defenders, voted yes enthusiastically. When the final tally came in, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as a full member, with all the rights and responsibilities that implied. Kevin felt emotion welling up inside him, but maintained his composure. On behalf of all humanity, I accept. We will honor this agreement with everything we have. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted in every major city. Humanity had fought for its place among the stars and won not just through force of arms, but through demonstrating character and integrity. The wars were over, at least for now. In a small apartment in New York, Jake Morrison watched the news coverage with his crew. Amy, Peter, Danny, and Lisa had all gathered to witness this historic moment. They were still processing everything that had happened, all the battles they had fought, all the friends they had lost. "Do you think it will last?" Amy asked. "This peace?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know. But I think we have a chance. We proved we can defend ourselves, but we also proved we're not monsters. That's something." Peter raised his glass. "To new beginnings. To peace finally," Lisa added. Danny grinned. "To not getting shot at for a while." They all laughed and drank, allowing themselves to hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity had found its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as equals, as friends. Ambassador Thelsar returned to the Corvani homeworld and submitted his report to the Emperor. His recommendation was simple. Humans were not the threat he had feared. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. People who understood both the necessity of strength and the value of mercy. They will make good allies, Thelsar concluded, and perhaps in time they will teach us all something valuable about balance between power and compassion. The Emperor nodded slowly. "Let us hope so. The galaxy has been missing that balance for far too long." The defeat at Tau Ceti burned in the hearts of the Dreshni leadership like acid. Commander Valtek had been removed from her position and replaced by younger, more aggressive officers who wanted revenge. The Dreshni Military Council met in secret, discussing how to respond to this humiliation. "We cannot let this stand," one council member hissed, his mandibles clicking with anger. "The humans must be taught their place in the galaxy." "Agreed," another responded, "but we cannot face them alone. We need allies." Messages went out to the Corvani Empire and the Scythian Dominion, two of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Dreshni proposed a military alliance specifically designed to contain the human threat. They shared footage of the battle, emphasizing how dangerous these newcomers were. High Chancellor Mordak of the Scythian Dominion studied the battle recordings with great interest. His warrior culture respected strength, and the humans had certainly demonstrated that. But they had also embarrassed the Dreshni, who were allies of his people. An insult to an ally was an insult to the Scythians themselves. "We will join this alliance," Mordak declared to his war council. "The humans must learn that there are consequences for attacking established civilizations. We will assemble a fleet so large that they will have no choice but to surrender." The Corvani Empire, despite Ambassador Thelzar's continued protests, also agreed to join. The Emperor believed that superior numbers would guarantee victory. After all, how could one young species stand against the combined might of 3 ancient civilizations? Over the next 3 months, a massive fleet began to assemble at the edge of Corvani space. 200 warships, the largest military force seen in the galaxy in 10,000 years. Dreadnoughts from Scythia, carriers from the Dreshni Collective, and cruisers from the Corvani Empire. It was a force designed to crush any opposition. Earth's intelligence networks detected the buildup immediately. Spy satellites, hidden listening posts, and information purchased from neutral species all pointed to the same conclusion. The aliens were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. Admiral Helen Carter called an emergency meeting with the Unified Earth Council. President Linda Shaw sat at the head of the table, her face drawn with worry. She had been elected on a platform of peaceful exploration and scientific advancement. Now she was facing the possibility of all-out war. "How long do we have?" Linda asked. 6 weeks, maybe 8, Helen replied. "They're still gathering supplies and coordinating between 3 different military structures. But once they move, they'll come straight for us. Can we defend Earth?" Helen shook her head. "If we wait for them to reach the Sol system, we'll be fighting with our backs against our homeworld. Billions of civilians will be at risk. We need to intercept them before they get that far." General Marcus Webb pulled up a star chart. "The Arcturus system is a strategic choke point between their space and ours. If we position our fleet there, we can meet them on our terms." President Shaw closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, there was steel in her gaze. "Do it. Mobilize everything we have. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The order went out across human space. Every available warship was called to duty. The 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th fleets began converging on the Arcturus system. Shipyards worked around the clock building new vessels. Factories churned out weapons and ammunition. Humanity was going to war. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Commodore, was given command of a strike group consisting of 15 ships. His friend from the Academy, Commander Nicole Barnes, led another group aboard the UES Retribution. They had trained together, competed against each other in simulations, and celebrated each other's successes. Now they would fight together in the most important battle of their lives. The human fleet arrived at Arcturus 2 weeks before the alien armada was expected. They used that time to prepare. Automated defense platforms were hidden throughout the asteroid field that dominated the inner system. Mines were carefully placed along likely approach vectors. Supply depots were established on remote moons. Every advantage that could be gained was taken. Amy Sullivan flew reconnaissance missions, mapping the entire system in detail. Peter Hayes analyzed alien ship designs, looking for weaknesses. Danny Cruz trained boarding parties for close combat. Lisa Martin established secure communication networks that would be nearly impossible to jam. When the alien fleet finally arrived, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in a massive formation, they saw what appeared to be a much smaller human force. High Chancellor Mordak smiled from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Wrath of Scythia. "The humans are fools," he said to his tactical officer. "They face us with less than half our numbers. This will be over quickly. Shall we broadcast a surrender demand?" the officer asked. Mordak waved a clawed hand dismissively. "No, they had their chance for peace. Now they will learn the price of defiance. All ships advance and destroy them." The alien armada moved forward in a coordinated wall, their formation textbook perfect. They had studied human tactics from the Tau Ceti battle and were prepared for the Wolfpack strategies. What they were not prepared for was what happened next. The asteroid field came alive. Hundreds of hidden defense platforms activated simultaneously, launching waves of missiles at the approaching fleet. The aliens scrambled to respond. their point defense systems working overtime to shoot down the incoming threats. But while they were distracted, the human warships broke from cover. Jake's strike group hit the left flank of the alien formation while Nicole's group struck from the right. They did not try to engage in a pitched battle. Instead, they focused on the largest ships, the command vessels and carriers that coordinated the fleet. "Target the Wrath of Scythia," Jake ordered. "All ships concentrate fire on their shield generators." 15 human warships poured everything they had into High Chancellor Mordak's flagship. Railgun rounds hammered the shields while nuclear missiles detonated in carefully timed sequences. The Scythian dreadnought was powerful, but even its shields could not withstand such concentrated fire. "Shields down to 40%, Peter reported. "Their rear section is exposed." "Amy, get us in close," Jake said. The Defiance dove toward the massive alien ship, weaving between weapons fire with incredible precision. Amy's hands moved across her controls like a pianist playing a familiar piece, every motion smooth and confident. She brought them within a few hundred meters of the dreadnought's hull, so close that the larger ship's weapons could not target them effectively. "Danny, fire all missiles. Point-blank range," Jake commanded. Nuclear warheads launched from the Defiance's missile pods, crossing the tiny distance in less than a second. They detonated against the exposed section of the Wrath of Scythia, tearing through armor and internal structures. The mighty dreadnought shuddered, its engines flickering and failing. "We've crippled their main drive," Peter shouted. "They're dead in space." Similar attacks were happening all across the battlefield. Nicole's group disabled a Corvani command carrier. Human boarding parties seized control of a Dreshni destroyer. The automated defense platforms continued to rain missiles on the alien fleet, forcing them to spread their defenses thin. But humanity paid a price for these victories. The UES Vanguard took a direct hit from a Scythian heavy cruiser and exploded in a flash of white light. The UES Marathon lost power and began drifting, its crew evacuating in life pods. The UES Defender rammed an alien carrier that was about to destroy a crippled human frigate, sacrificing itself to save others. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the asteroid field was filled with debris from both sides. The alien armada had lost 80 ships with dozens more damaged. The human fleet had lost 22 vessels, with many others in need of serious repairs. High Chancellor Mordak sat in his damaged flagship, watching his fleet retreat. His tactical displays showed the truth he did not want to accept. They had been beaten not by luck or trickery, but by superior tactics and sheer determination. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. A communication channel opened. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen, his uniform torn and stained with smoke, but his eyes clear and steady. "High Chancellor, I am authorized to accept your surrender," Jake said formally. Mordak wanted to refuse, wanted to order his ships to fight to the last, but he was a warrior, not a fool. He had lost, and continuing the battle would only get more of his people killed. "I surrender," Mordak said, the words tasting like poison. "What are your terms?" "Immediate ceasefire. Your ships will be escorted out of the system. All prisoners will be exchanged, and you will agree to formal peace negotiations on neutral ground. And if we refuse later? If we rebuild and come again?" Jake's expression hardened. "Then we will meet you again and the outcome will be the same. Humanity does not seek war, High Chancellor, but we are very, very good at it when we have no choice." The alien fleet withdrew, limping back toward their own territories. On Earth, news of the victory was met with relief and sorrow. They had won, but the cost had been high. Memorial services were held for the thousands who had died defending humanity's right to exist among the stars. In the Galactic Council chambers, the member species watched recordings of the year. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours, every major city knew that humanity's first contact with alien life had ended in violence. The Dreshni had fired first without warning, without attempting communication. People were angry, frightened, and demanding action. In the war room deep beneath the Earth Defense Headquarters, Admiral Helen Carter stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire Tau Ceti system. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles during Earth's unification wars. Beside her, General Marcus Webb studied troop deployment schedules on his personal tablet. "The public wants blood," Marcus said quietly. "The politicians are calling for immediate retaliation." Helen nodded slowly. "The Dreshni think we're weak because we came in peace. They think one explorer ship represents our full capability. We need to correct that assumption. How hard do we hit them? Hard enough to make them stop. Not hard enough to start a war of extermination. Helen pulled up fleet positions. We'll send the third fleet. 20 warships should be sufficient. We disable their operations, take control of the system, and force them to negotiate. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth's military mobilized with frightening efficiency. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels switched to producing warships. Soldiers who had been training for peacekeeping missions suddenly found themselves preparing for actual combat. The unified Earth government authorized the largest military deployment in human history. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders. He was being transferred from the Horizon's Edge to the UES Defiance, a brand new warship fresh from the orbital shipyards. His crew would come with him. Amy, Peter, Danny, and Lisa had all volunteered to stay together, even though they knew what was coming. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the fleet assembled around them. 20 ships, each one bristling with weapons humanity had hoped never to use against living beings. Railguns that could punch through solid steel, missile pods loaded with nuclear warheads, point defense systems designed to track and destroy incoming threats. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. All ships report ready. Captain, Lisa said from her communications station. Bring up fleet command, Jake ordered. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. This is Admiral Carter to all vessels. Our mission is clear. We will jump to Tau Ceti, secure the system, and demonstrate that humanity will not be bullied. But remember, we are not murderers. We disable enemy ships when possible. We take prisoners. We fight with honor. Is that understood? A chorus of acknowledgments came from the 20 captains. Jake added his own voice to the mix. Understood, Admiral. The Defiance is ready. Then let's show them what happens when you attack humans, Carter said. All ships jump on my mark. The fleet disappeared from Earth orbit in a flash of twisted light and reappeared at the edge of the Tau Ceti system moments later. Immediately, sensors lit up with contacts. The Dreshni had 40 ships waiting for them, twice the number the human fleet had brought. Commander Valtek sat in her flagship, watching the human vessels appear on her screens. She felt satisfied. The humans had come to fight just as she had predicted, but they were outnumbered 2-1. This would be a quick victory, and then the Dreshni Collective could claim this system and several others as rightfully theirs. She opened a communication channel, making sure her voice would be translated properly. Surrender now, humans, and we will make your deaths quick. There was a pause. Then the human captain responded, his voice calm and cold. All ships, execute Alpha Strike. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human fleet did not charge forward in a mass. Instead, they split into wolf packs of 3 or 4 ships each, spreading out across the battlefield. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they had practiced this formation 1,000 times. The Dreshni ships tried to respond, but they were used to fighting in large formations where numbers mattered most. The humans fought differently. They used the space around them, creating angles of attack that forced the Dreshni to split their fire. When a Dreshni ship focused on one human vessel, 2 others would strike from different directions. Jake commanded his group with precision. Amy, bring us around to their port side. Danny, wait for the shield fluctuation and then fire all railguns. Amy's fingers flew over her controls, spinning the Defiance through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship that size. The Dreshni cruiser they were targeting tried to track them, but Amy was always one step ahead. Shield fluctuation detected, Peter called out from his station. Fire, Jake ordered. Solid metal slugs launched from the Defiance at a significant fraction of light speed, crossing the distance in seconds. They punched through the weakened shields and tore into the Dreshni ship's engines. The alien vessel went dark, drifting helplessly in space. Target disabled, Danny reported. Moving to the next one. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships disabled Dreshni vessels with surgical precision. When the aliens tried to regroup, the humans adapted instantly, changing tactics before the Dreshni could respond. It was clear that these humans had not just trained for combat. They had lived it, breathed it, made it part of their culture. Commander Valtek watched in growing horror as her fleet was systematically dismantled. Within an hour, 35 of her 40 ships were either destroyed or disabled. Her own flagship was damaged, its engines failing, its weapons offline, A human ship appeared in front of her, blocking any hope of escape. The communication channel opened, and she saw the face of the human captain who had refused to surrender. "Now we talk," Jake Morrison said, his voice carrying no joy in victory, only grim determination. Valtek's mandibles clicked in what might have been fear or respect. She was not sure which. "What do you want?" "Your immediate withdrawal from Tau Ceti, your agreement to release any human prisoners, and a formal apology to be delivered to Earth." "And if I refuse?" Jake's expression did not change. "Then we disable your life support and leave you here. Choose." Valtek chose survival. She agreed to all the human demands. Her surviving ships were allowed to leave the system under escort, their weapons disabled. The humans took control of the Dreshni mining stations and began setting up defensive positions. News of the battle reached the Galactic Council within days. Ambassador Thelzar stood once again before the assembled delegates, this time with video footage of the engagement. The chamber fell completely silent as they watched human ships tear through the Dreshni fleet. "You see," Thelzar said quietly, "I tried to warn you. The humans fight like they have been preparing for war their entire existence." "Because they have," someone whispered from the back of the chamber. High Chancellor Mordak leaned forward in his seat, studying the footage with new eyes. The humans moved with a confidence that spoke of countless battles, endless training, and a culture built around conflict. They were not lucky. They were skilled. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach to these humans," Mordak said slowly. But Commander Valtek, attending the meeting remotely from her damaged flagship, shook her head. "It is too late for that. The Dreshni Collective has been humiliated. Our military council is already calling for a greater response. They are reaching out to allies." "What kind of allies?" Thelzar asked, though he already feared the answer. "Anyone willing to help us put the humans back in their place," Valtek replied. "The Corvani Empire, the Scythian Dominion, perhaps others. We will assemble a fleet so large that even these dangerous humans cannot stand against it." Thelzar felt his crystalline body pulse with distress. "This is madness. You will only make things worse," but no one listened. The council adjourned without taking action, each species returning to their own territories to consider what they had witnessed. Some were frightened by human capabilities. Others were angry at the defeat of the Dreshni. And a few, like Thelzar, were simply sad that first contact had gone so terribly wrong. On Earth, celebrations were muted. Yes, humanity had won a decisive victory, but everyone understood what it meant. They had crossed a line. They were no longer peaceful explorers. They were warriors, whether they wanted to be or not. Jake Morrison stood in his quarters aboard the Defiance, looking at a picture of Earth hanging on his wall. He thought about all the history that had led to this moment. All the wars, all the conflicts, all the hard lessons learned in blood and fire. Humanity had hoped to leave that behind when they reached the stars. Instead, they had brought it with them. And now the galaxy would learn what that meant. The massive space station hung in the darkness between star systems, its lights glowing like a small galaxy. Inside the central chamber, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations gathered for an emergency meeting. The room buzzed with strange sounds as different species talked among themselves, their voices translated by advanced technology into languages everyone could understand. Ambassador Thelzar stood at the center podium, his crystalline body shimmering with worry. He was from the Corvani Empire, one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. His people had been traveling between stars for over 50,000 years. They had seen many young species rise and fall, but the humans worried him more than any other. "Please, you must listen," Thelzar said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The species called humans have discovered faster than light travel. They are spreading into nearby star systems at an alarming rate. We must establish contact protocols immediately." A series of clicking sounds came from the left side of the chamber. Commander Valtek of the Dreshni Collective stood up, her insect-like body covered in shining armor. Her multiple eyes focused on Thelzar with what looked like amusement. "The humans," she said, her mandibles moving in a way that suggested laughter. "Those primitive creatures who still fight each other over invisible borders on their homeworld. What possible threat could they pose to us?" Other council members made sounds of agreement. Many of them had studied Earth from a distance. They had watched humans struggle with basic space travel for decades. The humans seemed harmless, barely capable of leaving their own solar system until recently. Telzar pulled up holographic images that floated in the air above the podium. The images showed human spacecraft, blocky and crude compared to the sleek vessels of the council races. But there was something about them that bothered him. They looked functional, practical, built with purpose rather than beauty. Look at their history, Telzar insisted, changing the images to show scenes from Earth. They have fought countless wars. Every generation brings new conflicts. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Yet they continue to survive and grow stronger. High Chancellor Mordak rose from his seat, his massive reptilian form towering over the other delegates. He was the leader of the Scythian Dominion, a warrior race that had conquered dozens of star systems. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights as he spoke with authority. All young species go through violent phases, Mordak said dismissively. They either learn diplomacy and join the galactic community peacefully, or they destroy themselves. Either way, they are not our concern. The Scythian people went through similar growing pains 20,000 years ago. We learned. They will too, or they will disappear. Telzar tried to explain further, but the council had already made up their minds. They voted to ignore the human expansion. A few species would monitor Earth from a distance, but no official contact would be made. The humans would be allowed to explore on their own, and if they caused trouble, the council would deal with it then. The Corvani ambassador left the meeting feeling defeated. He had seen something in the human data that terrified him. These beings did not fight like other species. They did not stop when things became difficult. They adapted, they learned, and they kept pushing forward no matter the cost. But his warnings fell on deaf ears. Back on Earth in the command center of the Unified Earth Space Agency, Captain Jake Morrison received his orders. He was a veteran pilot who had flown everything from atmospheric fighters to the newest deep space vessels. His record was spotless, his skills unmatched. That was why they had chosen him for this mission. You'll be taking the Horizon's Edge into the Tau Ceti system, the mission commander explained, pointing to a star chart on the wall. We've detected alien mining operations there. This will be humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. Make it count. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had trained for this moment his entire career. First contact protocols had been drilled into every deep space pilot for years, even though most people thought they would never actually meet aliens. He assembled his crew over the next week. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan would be his pilot, a woman who could fly through an asteroid field blindfolded. Dr. Peter Hayes would serve as science officer, his knowledge of alien biology and physics unmatched. Lieutenant Danny Cruz took the position of security chief, a former Marine who could handle any dangerous situation. And Lisa Martin would manage communications, her ability to learn new languages almost supernatural. The Horizon's Edge launched from Earth orbit on a clear morning, though morning and night meant little in space. The ship was an explorer vessel, equipped with scientific instruments, diplomatic supplies, and defensive weapons. Nobody expected to need the weapons. They were just a precaution. The journey to Tau Ceti took 3 days using the new faster-than-light drive. When they dropped back into normal space, Amy immediately began scanning the system. Her console lit up with contacts far more than they had expected. "Captain, I'm reading multiple vessels," Amy said, her voice tense. "At least 20 ships, and they're not mining vessels. They're armed." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was not what the mission brief had described. "Lisa, open all communication channels. Broadcast our peaceful intentions in every language we have." Lisa worked her console quickly, sending out messages in hundreds of languages, along with mathematical formulas and symbolic images meant to convey friendship. For a long moment, there was no response. Then her screen filled with incoming data. "They're responding," she said, but her face went pale. "Captain, they're locking weapons on us. Red alert," Jake shouted. "Amy, evasive maneuvers now." The Horizon's Edge lurched sideways as Amy threw the ship into a hard turn. A moment later, energy beams cut through the space where they had been floating. The Dreshni had decided not to talk. They had decided to attack. "Return fire, Danny," Jake ordered. "Disable only, do not destroy unless you have no choice." The battle lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. The Horizon's Edge was not a warship, but it had defenses. Danny managed to disable 2 Dreshni fighters with precise shots to their engine systems. Amy flew patterns that kept them alive, barely dodging incoming fire. Peter rerouted power to shields while Lisa tried desperately to establish communication. Finally, Jake made the call. Enough, Amy, jump us out of here. The ship lurched again as the faster-than-light drive activated, pulling them away from Tau Ceti and back toward Earth. Behind them, the Dreshni fleet regrouped, probably surprised that the human ship had fought back so effectively. Jake sat in his command chair, breathing hard. First contact had been a disaster. They had come in peace and been attacked without warning. Now humanity knew the truth. The galaxy was not full of peaceful explorers waiting to welcome them. It was full of civilizations that saw humans as weak, as prey, as something to be dominated. He opened a channel to Earth Command. Mission failed. We were attacked on sight. The aliens are hostile. Repeat, the aliens are hostile. The response from Earth was cold and clear. Understood, Horizon's Edge, return home. We'll be ready for them next time.